Welcome to another episode of Property Chat with Lucy, where real estate gets real. And today's episode cuts home, literally. I am talking about real estate and relationships. You are a newly wedded couple, you're in a long-term partnership, or you've been living with someone without formalities. How does the law protect you? Today's episode, we want to look at the legalities, risks, and perhaps smart moves that can help you protect your investment. With me on set today is none other than a very good friend of mine, a seasoned lawyer, and a very amazing, knowledgeable advocate in the family law. She's going to help us break it down, and this is an episode perhaps you don't want to miss. I'm your host, Lucy, and I want to take you through a journey of the basics of real estate, unfair, at times traumatizing stories in real estate. You're going to meet industry experts here, and also I'm going to share with you market trends on real estate, so you don't want to miss out on this. So look forward to an amazing time with me as I get you into my world of real estate. Every episode, I intend to educate you, inform, and inspire you. So stay tuned to this. Welcome on board. And karibu sana.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was listening to that intro and I was like, is that me she's talking about?
You know, the first time I met you, I was really triggered by your personality and your passion in real estate and relationship matters. Mm-hmm. And I thought, why not just bring you on set? We just educate people on this matter.
Thank you.
And I'll just allow you to introduce yourself. Perhaps I know you, but my viewers and my listeners really would like to know who Mimi is.
Okay. So, hi, my name is Mimi Aldrin Amulioto. Amulioto being a family name. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Lawyer, by the way, let me engage the people on this. Mm-hmm. Lawyer has an LLB, only a bachelor's degree. For me, I have a Diplo from KSL, which makes me an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Mm-hmm. I'm also a commissioner for oaths, notary public. I'm currently finalizing on my LLM on air and space law. I am the managing partner of ANC Advocates. I'm here in Nairobi, and I'm born again. Very, very important. So every perspective that I give is also from the basis of my integrity in that area. So I'm a family law practitioner primarily, but I do handle conveyancing, commercial law. I attend court on a regular basis. I think when you came to my office yesterday, I just had a very long court day. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much what I do, which is why we connected.
Yeah.
And I'm very stylish, just like you.
Oh, thank you. thank you for that. Now, when I look back, being a realtor in this market and advocating for people to invest in real estate, make money, there's an aspect, once you invest, how do you protect yourself?
Right.
We go through a lot of seasons, and I thought, why don't we look into the legalities as much as the risks? And this is not from the investing aspect.
Right.
This is after you've already gotten yourself in it. Right. How do you go about it to make sure that you protect? So with that, I'll probably ask you to bring out the legal aspects of investing for couples.
Right.
And I mean, it could be a registered union or not.
Yes.
You know, we are in a setup where a lot is happening in that segment.
So much is happening in that area. So for married couples, let me start with the very obvious setup. For married couples, that's pretty easy because the Matrimonial Properties Act sets out what kind of properties are, how it classifies the properties. So there's sole-owned property, then there's what is presumed to be matrimonial property, and then there's a difference between matrimonial property and a matrimonial home. And then there is family business. All of these are defined in that statute. Mm-hmm. So when you're getting into this, you need to know that what you're getting into, when you're getting into marriage, the property that you owned prior to getting married is sole owned, which means that you own it as Lucy by yourself, and your husband owns whatever he came in with by himself. then now what you get together in marriage is matrimonial property. And then there's the aspect of the matrimonial home. Where you live is a matrimonial home. People use the words interchangeably, but it's actually two different things. Property is a large array of things, but the home itself, the house that you're living in, is a matrimonial home. And then there is now the property that you get in marriage, but now where the challenge is where the husband gets property by himself in marriage and the wife gets property by herself in marriage. How do you safeguard yourself? When I said that you enter marriage with your own property, I think I've covered the singles and those who are willing to, waiting and hoping to get married, or they're getting married tomorrow. They're in that WhatsApp group where it's sole-owned property. Those who are divorced, it's sole-owned property, right? Those who are walking toward divorce, there is a consent form that you sign, an affidavit of consent, where your then spouse, who's soon to be a former spouse, signs that consent saying, that's not my property. Or you sign an affidavit, particularly when you're dealing with banks, because with banks, they require that affidavit saying that this property is not matrimonial property, right? As they're registering it. Especially, when you're dealing with banks, you're dealing with financing. So you're not able to come up with the full amount to purchase. So they come in, to finance. So they'll need evidence that this is not matrimonial property by way of that consent.
Oh, wow.
So this works particularly for those who are divorcing. This works for those who are single. This works for the singles, it's very easy. I'm not married. That's it. You sign your affidavit.
Yeah.
Now, when you're married, it gets a little dicey because the statute provides that when you're married, the property you purchase can be presumed to be matrimonial property.
Wait. Did you just say presumed?
Can be presumed to be matrimonial property.
Let me take you back,
Right.
because it kind of cuts with the presumption of matrimonial property. You just talked about joint and separate. Can these two coexist within the marriage institution?
Yes, you can have joint property and you can have separate property. There are couples who are married owning property separately. You can own apartments, you can own parcels of land where you're leasing for people to, and those are very good ideas. I hope people are taking note of this.
Yeah.
You can purchase land and then you lease it to other people to farm, which is really big in areas like Isinya, Embu, Meru, and places like that, right? And it's just sole owned by either partner, either the husband or the wife. And then there's the aspect of matrimonial property where now it is presumed to be joint just because of the way the two of you are behaving. The presumption is purely based on the behavior. If you're constantly visiting that parcel of land, you're throwing your eyes at it, you know about it, probably you contributed toward the purchase of that land, even if it's in one spouse's name, then it can be presumed to be, for family use. So it's therefore presumed to be matrimonial property. So even if it's held in the name of one spouse, whether most times it's held in the name of the husband, it's presumed to be held for husband and wife or for the family.
Sorry to take you back.
Right.
Maybe someone would want to know, what is this matrimonial property?
So matrimonial property is land, it's businesses, family, the definition of family business. It's where husband, wife, children are directors. Matrimonial property is cameras, the expensive stuff, artwork. It's things that you have purchased in the confines of the existence of your marriage. Okay. So if you guys got married 1st of April as a whole joke, 1st of April 1990, from 1st of April 1990 to date, or to the date of your divorce, it's matrimonial property in that it was purchased during the existence of that marriage. Unless you prove otherwise, or unless the way you purchased it expressly shows the intention was never for it to be matrimonial property. So it's not shared in any way. There's no shared account where the resources for this are going into. So let's say I have a business, my husband cannot now, if the monies from that business are coming into my account, it cannot be presumed to be matrimonial property unless I start to give him access. So once I open that door legally, then he can claim, listen, then the business was set up for the benefit of the family, which makes it either part matrimonial property or part family business. There can be questions. A good lawyer will definitely find loopholes in everything. And the issue is, how do you safeguard yourself against those loopholes to make sure that your sole-owned property remains sole-owned, and that which is supposed to be matrimonial property or that which you want to be matrimonial property remains that, and the matrimonial home also remains safe? Because the other thing is, a lot of people are throwing out one spouse, and then renting out the matrimonial home, which is against statute. Did you know that you're not supposed to, you cannot be thrown out of your matrimonial home? Legally, you should not be thrown out of your matrimonial home.
I have a question just there, because there's being in the market, I've met a case of a lady who was married.
Right.
They were gifted. Unfortunately, the parents, the in-laws, passed away, and the husband passed on as well. And the family came on to throw away this, like just to claim this property. In that case, is that a matrimonial property where you're gifted by your people, whether from your side of the family or the other side of the family? How is that constituted in terms of, or rather interpreted in law?
So with family law is not just when it comes to divorces. Family law involves children, it involves your marriage, and it also involves succession. So when people die, everything sort of shifts into the Succession Act.
Okay.
So then we start looking at it from that angle. Who owns the parcel of land, period?
That's it.
That's the first question. Good. So if it becomes an issue of ownership, then we look at how was it purchased and what was the intention. But solely from the angle of the Succession Act. Succession being, I'm trying to break it down, so I'm not just speaking legalese. Succession being, when people pass away, there's a law that governs that aspect and how their property passes on to the next generation of people, or the people they wanted to get that property. So then the question is, for that lady, what was the intention of the gift? Because Succession Act says a gift, was it in contemplation of death, it can be taken back if the person does not die. A gift in contemplation of death also must be within a period of time. So if
What's the period we're talking about?
I think it should be about 3 months. The person should die within 3 months. It's the same thing as an oral will. So if this person decides to change their mind, it is allowed by law for someone to change their mind when you're giving a gift in contemplation of death. So if this gift was given to a married couple, was there anything in writing? Remember, contracts are everything. Whether you're dealing with land, whether you're dealing with relatives, whether you're dealing with your best friend, contracts are everything. So is there anything in writing saying this was supposed to be given to so-and-so, or this is to be given to this person? Sometimes the gift is given not in contemplation of death, but it's just a mere agreement between parties. Where is the agreement? So in lack of, where there's no evidence of anything, there's really very little that can be done to help such a person.
I'm looking at also a situation where we've gone through this season. You meet someone, you're madly in love. And at that period, we don't make rational decisions, right? And you share someone that you share so much in common, even in terms of the dreams. You want to invest big. You get into the business and you realize real estate is one of the items that, or rather, areas that we can actually better our future together. What's your advice for young couples? The initial steps they need to take, as much as, yes, eventualities. I always say, and I'm not advocating for this. I always say, yes, it's till death do us part.
Yes.
But then the reality is, you have one life to live. If you're not happy, you can as well just step out.
Right.
So what are the initial steps a young couple or someone you're in that space where you want to initiate acquiring assets with someone? What are the initial steps you think, from where you sit, you need to advise them?
From where I sit, the first thing you have to do is a search. Because more and more trends are coming up where there are people who are getting into agreements for purchase of property that is owned by one of a friend or someone who's colluding with one of the spouses.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So, okay, let me just put it bluntly. You know how Kenyans be. 1 minute you're doing business with someone, the next minute you don't know what's happening with that business. Probably it's not even existent. So do a search on the title. Make sure that the owners are people that you have met and have discussed that this particular parcel of land with this, the size of the land as well is correct. Once you've dealt with that part, then do joint ownership. Look at it solely as a business venture. Because when you go into it with your heart, this is what most women do. 99% of women allow the man to have the properties in their titles. So when things happen later on, when you're divorcing, I remember I told you yesterday, people need to know a divorce case is not filed together with a matrimonial disputes case. Basically, when you're fighting for property, that's a different case. That's different legal fees.
Yeah.
And then if you have children, that's a whole other case. So you'll file 3 separate cases. When you're dealing with the property, if the property is in his name, he will make sure that that case goes to under matrimonial causes, matrimonial property, right? Where now he will say, listen, prove contribution. Prove what you paid for this. Fine, you're saying it's matrimonial property. I won't dispute that, or he may or may not dispute that, but then prove contribution because it's in my name. So the best way to safeguard yourself is, 1, keep your receipts.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying like now in marriage, you'll be keeping receipts, like we're just saying safeguard your interests. If this was your best friend, leave alone your spouse, you'd be keeping receipts.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true.
Contracts go bad even with your siblings. So keep the receipts, avoid cash transactions, have them in, checks, bank transfers, M-Pesa, because those are statements you can get even later on, right? Then do a joint ownership where both your names appear on the title. So at the end of the day, even when should you end up fighting at the very end and you're fighting to distribute the property, literally both your names are there. So you're splitting this 50-50.
Wow.
Yes. So then the argument would be any other properties or any other assets that would be deemed matrimonial property that are not land, that are not apartments, that is not, other structures.
Let's look at a scenario where there's no sale of property. It's like an Airbnb we are running together, and there's some money coming out of it, and we break up. How does the law look into that?
It's an aspect of contribution.
Again.
It goes again back into the aspect of contribution. So basically, you're looking at what each party put into this Airbnb to make it what it is at that point in time. So picture a complete Airbnb. It's got exquisite furnishing. Who furnished it? Even if you got someone to do it, who made that call? Who contracted that person? That's contribution, right? Who purchased the Airbnb? Who did the searches? Divorces, people get very vindictive. So that's the evidence we're looking for as advocates. We're looking for every and any small thing, so we're able to prove that our client is entitled to a certain percentage in terms of contribution. There is no staple amount or percentage that the law says it's supposed to be 50-50, it's supposed to be 70-30. You have to prove contribution, whether it's monetary or non-monetary. So non-monetary can be, I came and supervised the works in the Airbnb.
So do you record such 10 years down the line and you're talking about...
If you remember the fundi who was there, you call the fundi to sign an affidavit.
Wow.
Yeah. Because if you can't prove it any other way, it's not like you are taking, unless you took selfies in the place, or then you take these photos for fun. Like, oh, what a nice view, but in the background is some fundis who are doing the gypsum,
that can
doing
actually
the flooring.
be
Yes,
proof of...
you were present. This is contribution. It's called pettiness.
Yes.
Per excellence. This is what we do. We have to prove your case. So if I'm proving contribution and it's non-monetary because maybe you are busy taking care of the children, you are there hiring a nanny, you are there making sure his clothes are ironed, and those are going to laundry.
Small things we do, we might really come in handy.
Contribution includes childbearing, so.
Oh, wow. Good. I think everybody needs to take note of that as a woman, which now takes me to the role of women in this whole scenario.
Right.
You just mentioned something that monetary and non-monetary contribution, and also to show proof. There are situations where we're all career women here.
Yeah.
And we are ambitious, we want to invest. But there are other women who would want to just traditionally stay at home, and technically they might not be well educated to do photography or videography. Or how does the law, or rather in your line of expertise, such scenarios, how has the legal system recognized this, where probably the woman cannot prove this monetary, which technically it needs to be recognized, right? And a divorce happened. And the reason why I'm talking about this, there is a scenario that I know where the lady was not tech savvy to take these photos and all that.
Right.
And the man is well enabled. I think he bought himself out of the courts. And the woman now is out of a big mansion to a single room. And the kids have been taken out to a very nice home. So I keep on asking myself, where is the legal aspect of this scenario to know 20 years of her time, she has really taken care of this man to invest. She has given birth, taken care of the kids, cooked for the kids. Tell me how the law looks at this less fortunate woman with the investments in place.
So the biggest question would be, who is her lawyer? Because it all boils down to that. Do your research on who you get as an advocate. Because a lot of people, listen, when I came on board, I said I am a family law practitioner primarily. I did not say I'm a criminal law practitioner. So if you come to me with a criminal law matter, it's likely that I will pass it on to someone in my office or pass it on to someone else that I know has the expertise. A lot of people are looking for wakili yeyote, basically, as opposed to someone who's well-versed in that area of law. So the question would be, if she's in a single room, was it a willing buyer, willing seller kind of issue? Like, I left the home. Is it coercion? Because if it's coercion, that's something that you prove in court. You get her to swear an affidavit, and in the affidavit, she's particularizing, listen, I cooked, this man only looks good because of me, though you water grass, I watered this man. I fertilized that soil on which he's now so glorious. In this sense, the suits he's wearing, I made sure they went to the laundry, the shirts were well pressed, washed. I made sure that he had peace of mind even if that peace did not last. I made sure I took care of the children, because that itemizes contribution to the point where at the end of the day, she is granted certain properties in the final judgment. So if this is a matter that's currently ongoing in court, for her, I'd say she needs to either change her advocate or apprise her advocate on what he or she needs to do to be able to safeguard her interests. If she does not have an advocate, she needs to get one, because she needs to get someone who is versed in what exactly they need to look out for to be able to file the correct documents in court to safeguard her interests. And then she should not shy away from saying she wants the house she lived in for the past 20 years. It's also okay to, you see, the thing is, you come to the court and you ask, listen, I've lived in this house for 20 years with my children. I still have a right to be with my children in that house.
Yeah.
And you ask the court to grant you that. Many times, the court actually grants the wife
But let's
that
talk,
kind
this
of home.
is a rented house.
So when it comes to a rental house, you now look at every other property that they own, even if it's undeveloped land. Undeveloped land being, it's just land with no structure on it. No house, no cow shed, nothing. Even that, when the court is distributing, the matrimonial property, when they decide it's maybe a ratio of 60-40 or 75 and 25, if there's nothing liquid, something will be sold to give her that 25 or that 75, whichever the court decides to grant her in percentage of contribution. So she should not be able to walk away with zero. She should not be just there, getting nothing.
Mimi, truth be told,
It
the
happens.
reality on the ground is that things are happening
Yes.
opposite of what the law is dictating.
Yes.
And in this case, I'll still move on with that same scenario. This particular, let's call Alice. So Alice contributed financially to a matrimonial home in a rural grounds where she's married. And then the marriage is nullified in court. And that's the only asset she has. What happens, because in terms of looking back on our traditions, if a man tells you you walk out, that means you're there because of them or because of him. And he tells you to walk out. And this is something that you both, and you can actually prove your contribution to a matrimonial home you've built in the rural area.
Yes.
What's her take home in such a situation?
Her
Because you
take-home-
can't sell a home in
Absolutely.
yeah, you can't.
But you can compel the other party to buy you out.
Okay.
So if I'm entitled to 25%, you give me 25% cash.
Equivalent.
Yes. So that because clearly I cannot be in that home. Possibly even the parcel of land and the home itself is next to the guy's parents or somewhere near his relatives.
Yes.
So I am a person who's not wanted in that area. And personally, I think after divorce, you really don't even want to be that
You're
close to
actually
those
hated
people.
by the
Yes,
in-laws.
yes.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do is just give me my 25. You can give it to me in cash. You can find a way of liquidating other assets that you have personally
Yeah.
to pay me and buy me out of. You know, the people buy people out of shares in a company,
Yeah.
right? So when you're pushing out a CEO or you're pushing out a shareholder, there's a way that you can deal with that by liquidating other assets to be able to buy out the shares that they have. So I would say that's her take home.
Wow.
Yeah. Because you see, at the end of a marriage, now you look at this person as just some other business person you're dealing with. So you look at it commercially and commercially only. And perhaps it's where the law does not meet emotion. It's just where I need to get my client out of a bad situation and get them
Yeah.
into a legally sound
Yeah.
contractual obligation and situation.
Let's talk about the investment dilemma
Right.
for career women at the moment. Would it be wise to invest in a company or in your own name when you're in that marriage situation? What would be your advice on that? This is a huge dilemma. Everybody goes through it.
Huge dilemma for many reasons. One, and I think I spoke to several clients about this in the past 2 weeks. Many women are trying to think of how to pass on their assets to the next generation. Let me not speak for the men because I don't want to be accused of trying to woman-splain a situation. But for many women, that's where our heads are at. So the question would be, what happens if you die? Because that's where this is headed. If you're divorcing or if you die, what happens to your assets, right? If anything is in your name, the LSA provides for what is in the matrimonial home, you know, the nice clothes you have and the cook, you know, everything that you used within the space of the home exclusively belongs to your husband at the time. Then your other properties, in priority of getting properties, he's number one. So if you and him were not on good terms at the time of your passing, then if you don't have children, he gets things exclusively.
Oh,
right?
wow.
He's on the priority. It's him first, then children. If you don't have children, then it's your, you know, the parents, your parents, that is, and then your siblings. I mean, yeah, your siblings, your cousin, your grandparents, cousins, and so on and so forth. So imagine this is the person that is going to get your properties. So you're really not be able to safeguard this, right? If it's whether it's sole-owned property or not. That is the danger of if you're still married and the property is in your name. So how do you safeguard this? Is it safer for it to be in your name or safer for it to be in a corporate body? And I'm saying corporate body intentionally because a corporate body includes a trust.
Yeah.
A corporate body includes a company. Or alternatively, you can be like most women who decide to put the names of the properties in the names of their children. So that way, if anything were to happen, you're literally safeguarding this against any intermeddling party or any party who's willing to interfere. We have handled a matter where as someone's husband, my client was the wife, the husband purported to forge documents in order to sell her property. So he forged her signature on the sale agreement, on the consent. He even attached a fake ID. He attached a lot of different documents. So where we flagged it is when the bank called us to verify a certain document and to issue a replacement of an affidavit.
Yes.
And when I called my client to sign it, she had no knowledge that this transaction was taking place. So there are instances where male and female, husbands and wives, it's not just the men doing it, where people are using your title to get loans. Your title,
Yeah.
they're selling
Behind
that
your
property
back.
behind your back. And forgery, it's not like they're calling you for a physical interview to verify
Yeah.
these things. As long as it's a signed document, that's all it takes. Now the problem is with the lands registries. You know, in Nairobi, we have Ardisasa now, so it's your portal that will be used. So if the person has your password for the portal, that's it. They will transfer your property and you'll find you have nothing. So the safest bet, I'd say, is to have it in the name of a company in which you're not the only director.
Okay.
So you can have your children, if you really feel you have a good relationship with your parents or at least one sibling, make sure they are also directors with fewer shares, but you make sure that they are directors as well. Or just put it in a trust. So if you don't trust your spouse, and I'm saying this because it's true, there are some people who do not trust their spouses, male and female. If you don't trust your spouse, you can incorporate a trust or incorporate a company and then have the property in the name of the trust or in the name of the company. So before the trust is incorporated, because that takes a lot of time, it will first be in the name of the registered trustees of this trust. Yeah.
So just to mention, because I know we normally look for, that's one of the due diligence aspect we look into, consent from the partner if it's a husband selling a property. You know, you just don't move. And this is something I would probably advise anyone out there. If you're married and you decide to buy a property, I mean, you decide to sell a property, you need to get consent from both. Same thing on the other side. You're buying from a couple, make sure you also get consent, because if that's not there, the deal might not go through.
Yes.
Right?
Though it was done away with in part in law. There was a judgment about that, but still most entities still prefer that consent is in place so that you're able to safeguard yourself against being part of a case later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think it gives people a bit of comfort, and technically it's something that I always find adding a bit of confidence in investors.
Yeah.
Now let's look at the common mistakes you've seen couples do, because you've dealt, that's where your job stems from.
Yeah.
Where they come to you, I want this, technically, what are some of the common pitfalls you've seen?
Trust.
Wow.
That's like the biggest thing people do, because from there, all the foolishness flows from there.
Yeah.
Literally, you trust this person so much, you don't even care. They bring you a document. And as long as your name is on it, you're not reading the fine print. You just sign, babe, amenitumia karatasi. Like, babe can lie to you. The fine print on the document can refer to part of, let's say it's a sale or a purchase. It can refer to sale, the sale or the purchase of part of the property he's telling you or she's telling you about. It can refer to a parcel of land that you've never even seen, but he or she is showing you, a different parcel altogether.
Yeah.
So trust is the worst kind of thing. I mean,
which takes me to, is it advisable for couples to have like individual lawyers, like separate, not
always
one?
have your own lawyer? Yes, you're one flesh in spirit, not in real life, right? So have your own lawyers, because I don't know, I think I shared this story with you at some point. There's a place I worked when I was still a pupil, and there was this couple that were clients. Now, there's the principle of the Chinese wall, where if such a thing happens, you cannot divulge to the other spouse what the other one is doing separately. So they were coming together with, I think there was a purchase they were doing together. When that meeting ended, when she was ushered out, he said he has something he wanted to discuss. And because of trust, she left. But she had left something. But in that period of time, when she was going to her car, the guy brings in his Susie.
Who is Susie?
Susie. There's a judge friend of mine who says, Susie, come lately. Susie, come lately is number 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. So Susie comes in with a child, and we're doing a parental responsibility agreement for that child, inclusive of the purchase of an apartment and the purchase of a car. So when you look at both transactions doing with wife and Susie, it's almost the same amount of money. So he's pleasing both women in terms of assets. One just in terms of one parcel, it was a parcel of land with a house somewhere. And then for this Susie, it's a PRA, purchase of an apartment and a car. Now, when it comes to that situation, the wife walks in when we're still dealing with husband and Susie. And now we are hiding husband and Susie in the office because she thinks husband left.
Yeah.
And we're trying to circumvent all of this, and it was so dramatic because everyone is trying to hide Susie, especially Susie and the child.
Yeah.
You know how hard it is to keep a child quiet in an office. So we had to, trying to get to the, and she's saying, no, in fact, I have another transaction I want to do with you guys. So we're telling her, make an appointment.
Client
You have to come another day.
confidentiality.
Yes. So that, to avoid such situations where also you're caught up between not slipping up and saying something to one of the other spouses, it's always advisable to have your own lawyer, because that way your lawyer is able to give you a full picture of what your risks are and where your benefits are. Yeah. And they don't know your spouse, so they really
Yeah.
don't care.
That's so true.
Yeah.
In terms of the legal agreements that probably could protect us, I know it's not common, though probably could shed some light if people now are keen on signing up prenups, and ideally tends to give someone long-term protection.
Right.
Let's shed some light on that.
So prenups are provided in law. You can enter into an agreement to safeguard because the purpose of the prenup is to safeguard your assets. This particularly for the wealthier partner. Yeah. But things do change. So prenups nowadays have a clauses with regard to the assets of both parties, of course favoring the wealthier partner. And it parts of the provision is like giving a time span that the marriage should last. Yes, so that
Okay.
you're able to benefit financially from the marriage.
Oh, wow.
So the question is the moral aspect. Most people now fear prenups because you're thinking of an exit,
Yeah.
or you're thinking this person is only marrying you because of the money. So you're trying to force them into a situation where they love you for who you are, as opposed to loving you because of your assets. So you cut them out of the assets insofar as if we're not together anymore, you leave with nothing. If we are together, then you benefit X amount per year. Then on the 10th year, you get X amount as a bonus for being my spouse.
For this
You get
5
10
years
M
or-
for 10 years
Yeah.
of marriage. At 20 years, you get 20
Is
million.
that practical here?
People do it now. It is provided for in the statute, so you can actually have a prenup. Now, whether it's upheld in law or not is the other question, because prenups can be challenged on the morality and the intention behind it. Because if it is to deprive someone of the aspect of contribution, then it will not be upheld.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to look at it in that way, because if I contribute to your success and you're saying I can only walk out with what I walked in with, then it's repugnant to justice and morality, so it will be thrown out.
So what aspects do you look into?
You just look into the wording of the prenup. So if this prenup is solely crafted to make you suffer, like you cannot live with anything, the children will benefit insofar as they live with this partner, you can only be married for a minimum of 20 years. So that makes me question as an advocate, what is it that's going to happen in these 20 years? What is the purpose of this prenup exactly? Are you abusive? Closet abusive?
Yeah.
Are you a narcissist? What is the situation that makes you want to lock down properties in this way?
Yeah.
Because what is the intention of a marriage? It's a union between two consenting adults. So if you're consenting to this, then what are you also implying? You're implying that there'll be matrimonial home, matrimonial properties, and things like that. So are you trying to lock the person out of matrimonial property?
Wow. Takes me to the divorce drama,
Yes.
which brings a lot of emotions, financial complications. Just take us through anyone in their space where they have a room to escape through divorce, what does it take from the moment you make a decision, I want to divorce, looking at the real estate investments you've made? What does divorce, I think you had mentioned, but just you could highlight this as we move to the next question that I have for you that I think everybody would want to hear about it.
Right. So if you have a prenup, pull out your prenup. Pull out all your titles, your marriage certificate, if you have one. If you don't have a marriage certificate, and now this is when I quantify the kinds of marriages that we have. Post 2014, all marriages needed to have been registered. So if they're not registered, whether you've been together for 500 years or not, you're just two friends living together doing things you're not supposed to be doing. So you're investing with your friend. That's just your friend legally. So what you'd be doing in court is trying to fight for what is presumption of marriage first, as opposed to a divorce. So if you don't have a marriage certificate, then it's not a divorce.
Okay.
You're just dividing property among friends.
Yeah.
Unless now you go to court to presume it to be a marriage, and then after that now you can now proceed with, the next steps. So if you're divorcing, that's pretty much, get all your documents in order. And then emotionally, you have to be sound. Because remember, you're getting into a fight with regard to ownership and retention of assets, particularly land. People fight for the land, the houses the most, because those are assets that appreciate more than vehicles and other things, right? Because most people are now not liquid. They don't have cash. They invest heavily on land, apartments, Airbnbs, things like that. So that's where the money is. So you have to get the sound legal advice with regard to that. So what are your chances of success? Most people ask lawyers that question. What are my chances of success? Then get your receipts, if you have receipts, if you have evidence, those photos, the things I was mentioning earlier, those selfies you took with the fundis in the background. It might sound like a funny story between you and your girlfriends or you and your guy friends, but that could be evidence enough when it comes to a matrimonial property dispute, where this proves contribution. Those receipts from Biashara Street, the guys who, Shonesh had the curtains and the shears, right? For that Airbnb, for that hotel, there are people who have hotels.
Yeah.
And so when they divorce, it is a dispute over ownership of such a big enterprise. That's real estate, prime real estate at that, Your matrimonial home, you have to look at how much time have I actually spent in this house vis-a-vis my spouse.
Yeah.
Maybe your wife travels a lot, she's a pilot, or she's, I don't know, an agent who has to move around from country to country. So you spent most of the time there as the husband, or you spend most of the time there as the wife. So it then follows that you'd be arguing that, listen, because I've spent more time here, then I should own this property. So you're looking at getting all the evidence together, which then goes back to, before you go to the first step, you need to have sat with a lawyer so that your lawyer can tell you, now I need you to get these documents for me.
Yeah.
And I need you to be smart about it, because most people, by the time they're divorcing, they actually still live together. So as you're getting the evidence together, you need to be smart about it so the other person is not knowledgeable of what you're doing. Divorces in Kenya are not by consent of parties. Yes, there was a legislation, people were trying to get that to be passed as law, but it got overtaken by Gen Zs. So, when the Gen Z started rioting, that got shelved for some time.
Okay.
So there was that proposal that marriages should now end by consent, as opposed to fighting it out in court.
In court.
So the same way we agreed to get married is the same way we should agree to separate.
But I've seen situations where men decide, I want it done, but the woman is still sticking there.
Most women decide to stick on
because of the kids.
Because of the kids. And also there are some because of the property and the name. You see, I like the name.
Yeah.
So I'm not willing to give up the name.
Yeah.
The name walks me into rooms that the man has only walked into.
Oh, wow.
Some women only get glory because they appeared in a photo with the president. You see, that's the thing. So I'm holding on to that for dear life without realizing that I don't have any happiness or any joy or any peace in my home.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, her name is not on any title.
Precisely.
So when we're fighting for contribution for her, we're looking at the non-monetary aspect of contribution mostly.
Yeah.
Because she's been probably a housewife. She's just a trophy housewife,
Is there
Yeah.
a percentage that's normally during this divorce drama that's attributed to the monetary and non-monetary contribution?
Really, it's all about the evidence. Because I could give you several cases where, people have argued 50-50, 70-30. It really is about how you prove contribution of some kind. So it's just about the different types of contribution and what it is you can bring to the table. So
Yeah.
go you if you've given birth 8 times, because
Yeah.
that ups the number, your percentage. So if you have 8 kids and you took care of the house, you ironed those shirts, you gave him good, and he never complained about that aspect, maybe it's just your mouth that was a problem,
Yeah.
then, it's probably, it probably ups your numbers in terms of contribution. So you're getting closer to the 50% because of those things. Now, if you have some kind of evidence, even if it's by a house help who said, I saw her coming in with curtains, I saw her signing documents, then that brings you closer to the monetary contribution aspect. So you're getting closer and closer and closer to 70%.
Wow.
So there are some men who live with 30%. It's not a sad situation, it's about evidence. If you can't prove it, then it doesn't
So
help.
technically what I'm picking up is you need to show your contribution when
Absolutely.
it comes to how the separation of assets is going to happen.
Yes.
Then also in terms of if there is no any documentation, I mean not documentation, but joint investments, it's the names on the contracts.
Yes.
Wow.
It's the same thing with succession. If your father passes on, and you know the way Africans, Kenyans are, you'll find on burial date 10 different kids have come looking like you people, right? They can't just come claim part of ownership of part of the property.
Yeah.
DNA tests will follow on application to the court for an order to be given for DNA tests. Why? Because it's just that important. We can't just be handing out title deeds to just anybody,
Yeah,
right? So you
yeah.
have to prove contribution in marriage. You have to
Yes.
prove degree of what is called degree of consanguinity or relationship
Yes.
when it comes to succession,
Yeah.
right?
So as you wrap up, what are your 3 key advice points that you could give young people who
Yeah.
are in that space just to avoid future surprises?
Trust no one.
Wow.
Trust no, not even your lawyer, because
Yeah.
people have had bad experiences. Follow up on every documentation, do your due diligence. Get to know who you're dealing with, whether it's your spouse to be, whether it's your actual spouse. Like, I'm not saying follow people around, that's creepy. I'm saying get to do your due diligence, do your searches. Don't even trust what the government tells you in terms of the documentation, right? Follow through, do a search
Yeah.
to get to know the background story. And then be wise, think with your head, not your heart. Always,
Precisely.
don't say it felt right.
Please just say that
marriage.
again.
Think, is this my camera? Think with your head, not your heart.
Yeah.
Because that's how people get into bad marriages. That's how people get into bad business deals. That's how people lend out money to strangers.
That's
Think with
true.
your head, not your heart. Be objective with all your decisions. And when, get your lawyer. Get a good lawyer. Someone who's honest enough with you to tell you, this deal is just bad. It's a bad deal. Also, see your lawyer before you get married. Because we have a sense of,
Okay.
yeah, do you see your pastor before you get married? But pastors are those soft guys like, tutakuombea, it will work. Your lawyer will just tell you, I have done enough divorces. This is going nowhere. Yeah, this is a bad idea. So get good perspectives from
Yeah.
objective
Yeah.
people who mean well for you. Yeah, that would be my take
Wow.
home.
Thank you so much for sharing those insightful pointers.
Yeah.
And I look forward to seeing you in my next episode as we continue with this conversation on real estate and relationships. Let's see in our next episode what happens if someone dies and probably you're part of that conversation. That's going to be, it's quite hard because there are emotions, there's loss, but then also there is money involved in it. Let's look into real estate and inheritance surprises in my next episode.